What's up everybody? I'm Jordan, professional cocktail and product photographer. Today I'm going to be walking you through one of my tactics for making really simple or boring looking cocktails look a lot more interesting using just a few drops of water. So this is the ripple shot. The concept is super simple. We are just capturing a cocktail right as a single drop of water hits the surface of the drink so that you get a perfect ripple on top. I do this a lot when I'm photographing a drink that is served up, meaning without ice, and if it's just kind of plain looking, like it doesn't have a garnish or anything really that cool or recognizable about it. If you capture it right, that little ripple on the surface of the cocktail will just make the drink look a lot more interesting and inviting to the viewer. Can be a little tricky to capture, but I'm gonna show you how it's done. Here's what we're using gear-wise. I'm at least gonna be using one light or one flash. You can use the sunlight through a window or even a continuous video light if you want. I just find it easier using a flash because then you can crank up the power on that light, close down the aperture on your lens, and get a lot of fine details in focus. I'm using one 80-200 Pro with the bulb head attached. You can use a bigger strobe, you could use a speed light, doesn't really matter. Then I'm gonna be putting that into this strip box here, which I believe is 12 inches by 56 inches, mounted on a light stand. It doesn't necessarily have to be a strip box like this. It could be whatever a normal size softbox is, or again, you could just use a window. But it is helpful if you can have your light source up high and maybe even angled slightly over your subject. Since we're just using one light, I also have a little tabletop bounce card, which is just made from white poster board. I might not even use it, but if we need to, we can use this to bounce light back onto our subject and fill in some shadows. Camera-wise, obviously use whatever you have. I'm using the Sony a7R IV. On there I have the Sony 90mm macro lens, and I have an X Pro trigger on the hot shoe so I can fire my flash wirelessly. And this is just a boring white table that I have in my garage studio, so I'm gonna clear that off and throw on an Ericsson Surface to make it look a little more interesting. All right, you might not be able to see this on this camera, but this is just a simple wooden surface that's been stained black, and you can actually see a lot of lines in the wood grain through the stain. The last thing we need is a cocktail to shoot. That's this kind of shoot, not this kind. So I'm gonna make a simple Negroni served up. Now we have our Negroni cocktail just served in a simple Nick and Nora glass, which I think is very pretty and understated, but it is fairly plain. There's no garnish on there. It's not super interesting looking. Now, if I get out of the way, you'll see we have the a7R IV mounted on a tripod, shooting down at our subject, the cocktail here. And then we have the flash on the opposite side of the table at a similar angle. So we kind of have this V shape going on. Settings wise, we're going to completely remove all the ambient light in my studio. I just have two video lights on right now, but those won't have any effect on the exposure. If I was to take a shot without the flash on, it would be a completely black image. My shutter speed is 1/250. My aperture is f8, ISO is 300, and then my flash is at 1/8 power. We'll start with that for now and adjust if we need to. Quick test shot here. We'll take a look at that. Keep in mind, I have done this a few times, so honestly, this first shot looks pretty good to me as is. This is part of why I like that strip box for photos like this. You get a nice soft strip of light in the middle of the image, and then it kind of falls off towards the edges. Then of course, backlighting a cocktail is always a good idea because then you get that subtle glow in the glass there. Now the key for a good ripple shot is to make sure the light source is being reflected on the surface of the cocktail, which it is in this image. I am a bit of a perfectionist though, so I am going to try moving the light around a bit just to see what our other options are. All right, so I've raised the light up a little higher, and then I'm actually moving the light away from the glass, so it's not actually right above it, it's actually kind of shooting kind of right behind it. As you're doing this, you'll probably notice even just really subtle movements will drastically change how your photo looks. So with this lighting position, you can more easily see how the strip box is reflected in the surface of the cocktail. Now it kind of has this light and dark look on the surface, which will look really cool when we add the droplet to get the ripple. You don't have to shoot it this way, but just having that light and dark both on the surface of the cocktail just adds a little something extra. Here comes the fun part. We are going to set our camera to, you can do a 5 or 10-second timer, whatever works, but we're also gonna set it to do a 3-photo burst. Something to keep in mind is that you could easily burn out a flash when doing this. So if your flash is on full power, you may want to adjust your exposure settings so that you can turn down the power a bit. Mine is at 1/8 power, so that should be okay. Next, you're gonna need a little dropper bottle like this. I got mine from the grocery store for like $2. I just have water in mine. If you really don't want to water down your cocktail any further, then you could put some of your cocktail in here, gin, vodka, whiskey, whatever. And then what I do is click the shutter on my camera. As it's counting down, walk over to the opposite side of the table from my camera. And then I hold the dropper above the drink. Doesn't have to be too high. And I always try to aim for just the dead center of the glass. And then once the camera counts down, I release a drop or two right as it takes those 3 quick shots, and then we can go check what we got. As you can see, it's very quick. Even in those first 3 photos we got, each one is actually very different looking, which is part of the fun. Honestly, I just do this a bunch of times until I get a few photos that I really love. You can mess around with doing multiple droplets, holding the dropper up higher, seeing how that looks. Ooh, I love that type of shot where you get it right when the droplet hits before there's actually a ripple, and it just looks like a crater in the drink surface. It's crazy. For this last one, I've adjusted the light so the strip box is actually touching the base of my photography surface, and the top is actually coming up over my camera. I really prefer the more subtle shots like this, where it's not some big crazy splash, but it's cool enough to get someone to stop and go, whoa, look at that. Well, hey, now you know how it's done. But if you have any questions or you need me to clarify anything that I showed you, please comment on this video. I'd be happy to help you out. If you try this out and you get a few photos that you're really excited about, I would love to see them. So tag me on Instagram on either of my accounts. Love to check them out. And of course, if you want to see more tutorials like this, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.